Hola!
I'm Johanna.
And I'm Denisse.
Welcome and bienvenidos to the Love and Evolve podcast, where we discuss topics surrounding holistic wellness, such as mental, physical, and spiritual health. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer.
Love and Evolve Wellness Podcast is a community space for conversation, growth, and healing. However, it is not a substitute for professional mental or medical care. El podcast no sustituye ayuda psicológica o médica.
We encourage you to seek resources and support in your community. We love you, los queremos mucho, and you matter to us.
Thank you for listening, and on to the show.
Hello, everyone. It's a brand new week. It's a brand new episode. This episode, we're connecting to the last one because we like to make our connections. And if you listened, you know what it is. And if not, our last episode was about racism and privilege. And it was a conversation between Joe and myself. Joe shared a story, an event that happened to her in her life, and processed through that event with me. And so that got us thinking about what it means to actively listen to someone and how to be there for someone.
Yes, and while we were in the middle of recording our last episode, this just came so naturally and so organically in my head. I was like, wow, the amount of active listening that Denisse is doing right now is providing such a safe space for me to dive deeper into these feelings, into this topic. And so I thought, why not do some further talking about how can we actively listen to each other? Really something that it's a skill that we can work on and improve each and every single day.
Yeah, and I think it's something very important, relevant for everyone.
So I want to start with a question today. I want to ask all of you, has there ever been a time in your life where something really exciting has happened, or you've just discovered news about something and you just feel so joyful, or maybe something happens and you feel so incredibly frustrated, or you're upset at work, or something's just not working out and you really want to talk to someone about it? And then somehow you end up walking away from that conversation feeling alone, even more alone, or maybe ignored. Or
like, what just happened? Was I there?
Exactly. Did something come to mind, Denisse?
Not one specific event, but I can relate to that feeling of being excited, of wanting to share something and leaving that conversation, not feeling as excited as I was, feeling not special or not like I don't matter. So it's a yucky feeling to feel like you don't matter, and someone who you're hoping will listen to you with their full attention is actually not quite there. And that happens. Sometimes I'm not actively listening and it's later and I think, oh man, I was a really bad friend right there. I'm sorry, and I have to check back in with my friends. So I'm guilty of that. I've done it before. We're human, right? We've all either been on one end of that conversation.
Yeah, there's so many factors that come into this. What kind of day did I have? And how am I feeling right now? How much is on my mind? Am I stressed? Like, all these things can come into play when we are trying to listen to someone. And sometimes we may have something exciting that happens. And when someone comes and shares something exciting, we really want to connect and relate. And we end up sharing because we're so excited. But in doing that, then we're not actively listening to what someone else is telling us.
Yes. And I don't know if you know or you've had this experience where when that other person is thinking of a response, so they've stopped listening to you. It's like you can see their thoughts processing out in the open space, right? And you're like, oh, I've lost them. They're already thinking about something else that they want to insert right now.
I'm making so many faces right now because I am guilty of this action. Like, yes, I can wear my active listening hat, but there are times where it just kind of leaves me. And so now we go into this, like, I want you to think about this. Like, we are sharing what it's like when we know when someone is not listening.
Mm.
And so now I'm wondering, what is it like when you really heard? Like, how do you know when someone was fully present when you were sharing something?
Usually there's a lot less talking on the other end. There is space, there is silence, there is room for thinking and hearing your own self as you're saying and sharing what it is that you want to share, and seeing that the other person is engaging not so much in response, but also in their body language, right? They may be inched closer a little bit, like they're trying to actually hear your words. It's in their facial expressions, right? So it feels so much more interactive, even if they may not be saying a whole lot. And you can listen with words. So I don't want to say that active listening means that you're not saying anything, because that could be awkward if you're like, all right, active listening, will not say anything. The other person's like, wait, are you like, what's happening? Give me some feedback, right? But the feedback, if you're responding, is reflecting back what that person said. It's relating to their feelings and saying, oh, wow, you're responding to them as opposed to responding to what's happening in your own mind or inserting that next thought, or, it's really about that other person that you're listening to.
You're talking about all the different components that I'm going to share later, which I love because you're already telling them. I hope the listeners are listening. Spoiler alert, it's coming. Yes. So what I think would be really great if you listening right now are in a space where you can write these questions down, or maybe Denisse and I, we can share them later on our show notes. But if you have the time to spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes just journaling on what does it feel like when you share something and you end up feeling like you weren't really heard? What is it like to listen to someone, to really listen? So for you, how do you experience really listening to someone else? And then also, what is it like when you feel really heard? And then just process that, journal that, and see what comes up for you, because it can be a really special experience to do that.
I like those questions a lot, especially if you've ever been told that you're not listening. That could be a really good exercise to go through, to then journal out, what's it like when I think I'm listening? So what is it that I think I'm doing? And are there some blanks in here that somebody else can fill in for? Or may I be able to catch and notice when I'm not actually showing that I'm listening, though I think I am.
Yes, I would add all of those to that journaling exercise, because those can also be very useful. Thank you, Denisse, for adding that.
Yeah, this is 10 years of marriage.
I'm going to add a little quick side note here. So it is also something to note that maybe we're active listeners in some areas of our lives. So maybe we're active listeners in where we work. We're active listeners with our partners or our friends. Maybe we aren't active listeners at all. But to really kind of just take inventory of, because it could signal a lot of information about where am I not being an active listener?
Yeah.
And what is that about?
Yeah. Ooh, that's good stuff right there.
Say more.
Yes, because maybe in the workplace, it's more comfortable. It's stuff, it's like, okay, yes, I can give feedback, receive feedback, but then in my relationship, maybe there are things I don't really want to hear because I know it's stuff that I need to work on, or it's just uncomfortable. Therefore, engaging in this active listening is just a little bit more scary. So that's all really good stuff right there.
Wow. I'm getting juiced. Like, oh boy.
Nerd alert. I say that lovingly.
I feel it lovingly. Okay, so where were we? So I had this incredible professor when I was in grad school, and this is where all of the information that I am going to share with you all tonight is coming from. And she wrote this excellent book called Essential Psychodynamic Psychotherapy and Acquired Art. And
Oof, that's a title.
I know. And it was written for, people that go into psychotherapy or practice or clinicians. But I like to be a rebel. I think everyone who wants to improve their listening skills or wants to learn more about how trauma affects our brains, and how intuition can be really helpful to us healing. All these different components are in here. So although it is written with a clinical hat in mind, there is so much really useful information. And it's a very short book and it's easy to read. So,
oh, nice.
I would encourage anybody who's interested in this to read it. It is amazing. And anyways, I'm going to go off and talk about that. So I'm not going to do that now. But one of my favorite quotes from this book is the following one. And it's about what it means to be active listening. The art of listening deeply involves opening oneself up to the pain of another and bearing, not stopping the pain. It means using the satellite dish of our own bodily felt emotions to receive and stay with the emanation of the other in the moment.
That's full on empathy right there. And empathy being with someone in their pain, right? Not feeling that you need to fill that space up with having to have a reaction or a solution. Actively listening and being there in the moment. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And in this quote, it's specifically talking about pain, but I would like to insert in parentheses emotion. If someone's coming to you and sharing something that they're really happy and excited about, empathize in that way. Like, wow, this person's really feeling, like, how is what they're sharing creating an emotion in you? Because it could be very telling about what this experience is for the other person. And it can also be with pain. Like if someone's really experiencing pain, like, how are you feeling in your body as they're sharing this? And not in a way to like, oh, I sense this in me, so therefore they must be feeling this. Not in that way, but more so, oh, wow, this might really feel uncomfortable for this person to share, and they're willing to share it with me.
Yeah. It's just like when you mentioned hearing something that's exciting from somebody who wants to share, oh, I've had this really exciting moment, right? But feeling so excited that other person is excited and meeting them there with that excitement. So as you were saying that, I had this image of friends jumping up and down, like just ecstatic, right? Because one person's excited and the other one's like, I'm so excited, you're excited. I love the visual I got from what you said.
Yes. And so that's what it's about. It's about, matching someone's energy and space. And that does not mean that you ignore whatever you're experiencing while they're sharing what they're sharing. But if someone is coming to you to share and you're trying to practice active listening, that's the time when you really want to open your ears and open your heart and be present for the other person. And of course, this is only if you want to improve your listening skills and you want to actively be present for someone. I'm not saying that you should always do this, but if you would like to have deeper connections, this could definitely get you there. So another way to look at active listening is attunement. This is when somebody is actively listening to another individual, and it could be listening, but you're also paying attention and noticing to the verbal and nonverbal cues. And the moment when this first happens is with our primary caregiver when we are infants. We are experiencing our needs, or we are expressing our needs through the only ways we know, which are in crying and looking. And so when we're very young, we're seeking to have that attunement, that recognition that what we are experiencing and asking and needing is being received. And that is when a parent would engage with eye contact, offer options like, oh, maybe they change the diaper, or, oh, maybe they rock the baby, or, all these different kinds of ways to attune to somebody.
I'm full of images today as I'm listening to you. I was processing what you were saying, and then also in attunement, the word that came to mind was mirroring. So that's reflecting back someone else's emotions or their body language. So if somebody's really sad and then they're speaking quietly and they're kind of hunched, it kind of naturally happens that if you're actively listening, you'll mirror them and kind of come down as well to their level, and your voice will also soften so that to show you're in that same energy space with them. And I thought of, because I love watching dog videos, but I thought of, have you seen huskies are hilarious, but when a baby's crying and then the husky comes in, or another dog crying and howling, and it's like, it's just so sweet, but the dog's mirroring what's happening with that baby, right? And really attuned and tapped into that emotion.
My heart is so full right now. I love huskies. I hope to one day have a husky.
They're so talkative.
So yes, what Denisse is talking about right now is an attunement that happens, and it doesn't just happen with humans, but it can be with our fur babies. It can be with our other people. You see it in evolution with animals, the animal kingdom. You see how they have different ways of attuning to one another. So anyway, now we're going into evolution, but coming back to this topic. So you might be wondering, like, okay, well, so now I'm understanding that there's this idea of active listening. Well, how do I do it? And the way that this book describes it breaks it down into 3 main steps. And the very first one is quieting down. And so what does this mean? It means noticing what is happening in your head in that moment. Is there a lot of chatter? Are you focusing on all the things you have left to do while someone's talking? And then are you feeling pains or aches in your body? Doing a body scan, figuring out, okay, how's my body feeling? And just really focusing on quieting it all down in your head so that you can then be present to what the person that is sharing.
No, absolutely. And some of you may have heard this or have experienced this yourself, that when you're in a disagreement with someone, especially a loved one, we tend to really get into heated arguments with the people we love the most, that it can be beneficial to step away for a bit and collect yourself so that you can be a little bit more present to not only hear the other person, but be more connected with the things that you truly do want to communicate, which could get lost in the moment if you're just flowing in all of those feelings, all those emotions and thoughts. That it can be beneficial to take a break, right? Take a lap around the house and say, all right, I need a second to collect my thoughts. I'll be right back. This is not me leaving the conversation. This isn't me isolating you. I do want to make sure I collect my thoughts so that when I come back, I'm here to better listen to you, and that it's in a way that's helpful to the both of us and not harmful to either one of us. So what you're saying is, yeah, if you've had a hard day, a long day, and someone comes to you and says, I'm so excited, but you're in the stress of your day, right? How difficult that can be to then have to switch so quickly to active listening.
And it's not about changing, your state of mind to be present for the other. It's about noticing, and then acknowledging it for yourself. Because, if I'm really angry about a bad day, and then hubby comes over and tells me something he's really excited about, and I'm still thinking about so-and-so did what and what, and it just, and he comes at me and is all excited, and I'm still thinking about this other thing. Not only I'm sure he knows that I'm not fully listening now, that something's going on, but then it almost sort of creates this block for a connection to be made.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would be a good way to go about it would be to, for myself in this situation, be to, hey, Joe, you had a really rough day. Let's just box it up. We're not ignoring it. It's important. But right now there's something that is happening that really needs your attention. And then just moving it to the side for now, not for forever, right? Just for now. And then that allows your mind to start to quiet down so that you can be present. And then the other thing I wanted to share about quieting down that is really important is as someone is sharing something, if you're someone who likes to fix things, you might have a tendency to be like already thinking about millions of ways that you can provide a resource or the millions of ways that you can fix this other person's problem. And it's uncertain if the other person is seeking for advice or not. And if you jump in to try to solve their problem, they could feel lots of things: shame for not coming up with the, answer before you, or feeling unheard, or
yeah, not feeling heard, or feeling like a project. And I completely understand that as someone who wants to be helpful, to feel like you're needed, like you're participating, that, you're in this give and take relationship, or an exchange. I want to rephrase, not give and take, but, you're in exchange, that offering up support or advice can feel really good to you. However, like you mentioned, it may not necessarily be received that way because it may not be what that person needs. So that does take a little time to figure out, okay, am I stepping in here with advice to validate myself that I'm needed, to prove to myself that I'm helpful? Or is this something that I can make note of? And then when this person is ready, then I can say, oh, hey, would you mind, or are you open to hearing some suggestions? Is this something that might be helpful to you? Because this did come up for me while I was listening to you, that you mentioned this, and this came to mind. So not only now are you saying, I heard you, because I'm repeating back what you said,
I'm bopping my head like a bopplehead over here. Like, I'm in such agreement right now that I'm like, like, oh man.
So all that to say that this advice and wanting to help, there is a place for it. It's just about when and with what intentions, right? So active listening takes a lot of work. It is the skill, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So part of quieting down is, again, just recognizing, am I trying to solve something? Am I jumping to give advice? Am I jumping to make suggestions or solve or fix, just being aware that if that's what we're doing, then that could be a sign that we're not really listening.
Yeah. And what's the motivation behind it?
Right. And I think what you said is so powerful, because like that is key, to be able to reflect. And because if you're feeling triggered right now, or like annoyed by maybe what I'm saying, that might be a sign that there needs to be some reflecting on this topic. And I invite you to be gentle with yourself with that. Like, it is totally okay. This is such useful data if you're feeling this way. Because what Denisse is touching on is, what is the motivation? If we're jumping to solve, what is the reason that I'm jumping to solve? Because it could provide you such important information about where there's areas for growth for yourself.
And a stronger connection with the person that you're in a relationship with. And finding that sweet spot of communication. This is something that I've worked through with my husband, and he wants to help. He wants to come in and jump in with a suggestion or a solve it, a fix it, right? Because especially if it's something where I'm stressed or in pain, he wants to come in and be like, oh, I can do this. Come on, I can fix it for you, right? And I've had to say, I appreciate that. But in the moment, I really just need you to listen and hold on to those thoughts. And then when I'm ready, then I'll come to you and then ask you specifically for, okay, now what? So it's taken some time, but it's all data, all good to know.
I think you touched on something else that's really important, is there's a way we can go about it. We can say, before we start talking to someone, and it might feel awkward at first, but you could just voice like, hey, I have something I want to share, and right now I just need you to listen. You could state it beforehand, or you can say, I'm really going to need suggestions on this, and then share what you need to share. Or if someone, jumps in to try to give you advice and that's not what you wanted, you can always provide feedback in the moment and say, hey, I really appreciate that what you're trying to do is out of love, but I think right now the kind of support that I need is just for you to be here with me.
Yeah.
And then, so moving on to the second one. The second one is to be present for the other person. And so how do we do that? Again, it's similar to the first one in terms of scanning. Am I stressed? Am I like figuring out where am I at with my own emotions? and how might some of that get in the way, or where I'm at in my emotions might actually help me be more empathetic.
And could that being present include things like distraction? So technology.
Thank you for saying that.
Perhaps, yeah, a project, a worry. You've got a to-do list in your head, and it's like saying, I'm worried. I have all these things to do. So any form of distraction, putting those things on pause. I know sometimes I think I can multitask, and it's like, I'm thinking, yeah, sure, I can listen and I can read something and I can check a text message, and no, the truth is no. That's not allowing me to fully be present and listening.
Yeah, and something that has happened to me, because I think I can multitask as well, and that's not true. I don't do it very well. Sometimes I can, but most of the time not very well. Is to own when that's happening. It's like, hey, you know what? I actually really care about what you have to say, and I'm really struggling to hear you right now. Just give me a second. So that you can then shut that part off, or say, hey, I'll see you in a minute. I'll see you later. I'll deal with you later, or whatever you need to do. And then say, okay, now I'm listening. Go. And hopefully the other person's understanding. Sometimes that's not the case, and you all also want to be aware of what's being shared too. But if it's so distracting that it's not allowing you to be present, just owning it, like, or hey, I'm actually on my phone right now. Let me set this aside so that I can give you my undivided attention.
Yeah, that feels so good. You just said that, and I'm like, yay, she's gonna put her phone away. I mean, there's no phone, but it's like as if it was happening. Yeah, it just feels good to hear that. And this has me thinking about, and I'd like to introduce active listening, that it doesn't have to just be within a relationship or with another person or multiple people, that it can be something within your own self. And I am so guilty of this, of when I'm taking a break, when I'm having a lunch break, of sitting down and in front of the TV, because I'm like, okay, I can catch up on a show and have my lunch. And then I have a thought and I'm like, okay, so I have the TV on, I'm trying to eat my lunch, and let me check my email. So I have now 3 things going on. And I'm completely ignoring my own body. And what's happening is I'm not tasting my food. My heart rate has gone up. Now I'm anxious because I'm trying to balance 3 different things at the same time. And I'm just completely disconnected. So I've had to multiple times say, all right, phone, flip it over. I'm just going to now look at the television. I can at least look and listen and eat. And I know that's not also the greatest, but sometimes that's, what I can do in that moment. And baby steps, right? It would be ideal for me to just be with my meal, and enjoy that and taste my food and not feel anxious, right? So I did want to introduce that, about active listening can be something that you also practice with your own self.
Absolutely. I'm so all about that, because our body is sending us cues all of the time. This vessel that we're in that gets us to point A to point B to point C and helps us to physically connect with other human beings. I mean, it does so much for us, and it can be really easy to take it for granted. And I'm guilty of this too. It's something I work on every single day. I actually just sharing with Denisse yesterday about how I noticed, some, I don't know if they're called birthmarks, I don't know, notice that I hadn't noticed before. And I was like, whoa, like I've been in this body and didn't notice these things. Like, what other things have I been neglecting in my body? It's like, I feel like I'm taking care of it because I'm doing, nutrition, fitness, and all these things. And I'm like, obviously hygiene is super important and all these things. But it's like, sometimes it's just about noticing, looking at our bodies.
Yeah. Quieting down, like you said, step number 1, step number 2, being present. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how we can use this in other areas.
Yes.
So then for number 3, this one is really exciting to me because it is the key, I think, that holds, or maybe the glue that holds this all together. And it's about listening in 2 ways. The way the book describes it, or this professor describes it, is in simultaneous listening in two different channels. It's almost like you're listening to a song, and she does a much more artistic explanation of this. It's so crafty. I love it. So read it if you want to hear it exactly, but the way that I am sharing it with you all is tuning in to these two channels at the same time. So someone's coming to you and they're sharing something. I'm sorry, I didn't say what it was. So listening to the content and also listening to the emotion. Someone is sharing something. You're paying attention to what it is they're talking about, who's involved, what is it that happened, where did it happen, all those things, the who, what, where, that it is that they're sharing. But at the same time, also paying attention to the body language. How are they expressing this? How are they feeling about it? And then that way, when you share what you've heard and what the experience is, then it's going to be more complete versus just trying to focus in one area. And it will allow for the other person to really feel heard.
Yes. And our body language, I believe it's like, I don't know the statistic, and I'm sure it varies depending on the source, but it's like somewhere 70 to 80% of our communication is really our body language. Like words are like, right? Because we could be saying one thing and our body is really speaking the truth, right? We could be, think about how many times maybe you've gone to an interview or something and you're extremely nervous. So under the table, you're fidgeting but with your words, you're trying to express confidence. So it's like, which one's right? Yeah, the confidence, probably you're trying to embrace that. But really what your body is saying is you're at the heart of it is that you're nervous, right? You're stressed out a little bit. You're worried. You want to do well. Yeah, I love how it's listening to two different channels, the content and then the emotion, what's coming through in the body language as well.
So to add to this part of, the content is really straightforward. What is the person saying? And then the departure, as it's explained in the book, is really tapping in and tuning into the feelings. And so sometimes our body can provide us with very useful information about how another person is feeling based on how we are experiencing it in our bodies. So if someone is sharing something and you're being really aware to your own body, like it's a very complex and beautiful art, this listening skill, because we're listening to what is ours and what is the other, and what are they saying and how are they feeling, and how is how I am feeling being impacted by how they are feeling.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Oh my God, everyone listening is probably like, "Ta loca."
I'm hearing the computer go titu 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 titu. Must be computing.
So anyway, if you would like further information on that, I'm so passionate about this and I will go on forever. So I'm not going to go in more depth on that, but it is such a beautiful thing to tune into our bodies and figure out where we're at prior to really actively listening to somebody else if we have the opportunity to do so. Because then what happens is, oh, okay, I'm noticing a shift in how I'm feeling. Maybe this is coming from this person. And they're actually very sad, because if you pay attention to where do I usually feel sad and notice that your pit of the stomach, and this is from my experience, is starting to feel really cold, and this just pit, like at the pit of your stomach, it just starts to feel hollow, and you're like, wow, this person is really sad right now. And it starts to feel like pain. Then you're able to share with the other individual is genuinely, it sounds so painful. And I can guarantee you the other person will feel so connected to you because you are actively listening to not only what they're sharing, but to how they're feeling.
Yeah, it's with your full body. Yeah, it's so spiritual the way you express it. And I think it really, honestly, there is some psychic thing to it of feeling in your body. So to be so attuned to someone in their emotions, whether that's in a happy feeling, excitement, or a grief or sadness or anger,
Mm-hmm.
the intensity of that.
Mm-hmm.
And also in actively listening to someone else, not only sensing their emotion and what they're going through, but that to actively listen to someone else means that you're also actively listening to yourself, because based on
Mm-hmm.
how they're communicating something to you, it's then sending off signals to you of relatability, another, a memory of, or, ooh, I don't know, this is tough. I don't know how to relate to this. Or, oh, is that jealousy I'm feeling? They're saying excitement
Mm-hmm.
and, oh, what is that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
That there are nuggets of wisdom there and knowledge. And when
Yes.
you're just listening to someone else actively, that then you can actively listen to yourself.
Oh, I love what you just said. Nuggets of wisdom. Yeah, I like to think of them as gifts.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody else is, it's allowing for us to look at directly at what needs further work within ourselves, and to further connect with somebody else in their experience.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about this book, I know I'm obsessed with the book. Guilty. One of the other things that it talks about is the neuroscience behind this. And
Ooh.
I don't think that there's another book that I've read that really dives deep in this way. And it does it so beautifully, where it speaks to this dance that we do when we're talking to someone or listening to someone. And when we're tapping into that aspect of ourselves, how are we feeling, and how am I changing how I'm feeling based on how someone is sharing that they're feeling? Whew. I hope I'm making sense. And so it's speaking to how there has been research that's been done on this topic, and that the way that they're using the language in neuroscience is these are mirror neurons. And the way that this happens is someone shares something and they are sending signals, messages, these nonverbal and verbal cues, kind of what we were mentioning earlier. And then our brain is receiving, and there are certain parts in our brain that is lighting up to signal us to what is being sent.
Wow.
And it's absolutely fascinating.
Wow.
So anyway, there's more on that.
Yeah. Can you imagine being able to see that? If we could see light and sound moving, if you could see that energy passing through, that would be whoa.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. Wow.
So I had to hit the pause button real quick because I got way too excited. But now that I've allowed it to go out, I can come back to all of you.
Yes, we were in our spiritual, psychic, intuitive, woo-woo space.
There's just so much science behind this, and it's absolutely fascinating to look into. And it's stemming from, quantum mechanics and physics, and also in mirror neuron research in neuroscience. So check it out if you are just as excited about this as we are. And so kind of just to narrow in on and laser in on what it is that we are suggesting for us to expand our active listening skills. And these are some of the tips that we have for all of you, is use encouragers. So that would be what Denisse just did, which was, I don't know if you guys heard her, but whenever somebody is listening to you, the way you typically know if they're engaged is body language and facial expressions, but also there's like, there's so many million ways you could do it.
Yes, there's these sound reactions. There's a lot of head nodding or tilting of the head, or leaning in, crinkling your eyebrows, like you're like, I'm trying to listen a little more. Interesting. Yes.
And then the second one is paraphrasing. And this one is not saying, and some people might be thinking to the therapist that they once had and rolling their eyes and being like, oh, they repeated everything I said. That is not paraphrasing, folks. I mean, I suppose that it's one way to do it, not my favorite. It's really being able to take what someone has said and shorten it in a way that is very concise. And you might use some of the language that they used You might say things like, can you say more? Or you might want to clarify something. You know, I'm not sure I'm really understanding. Can you tell me more? Things like that.
Yeah. And it's often also a way to check in with yourself, with your level of listening. I know I do this to summarize or paraphrase. Let me give an example. So if somebody's telling me a story about what happened to them at work, I may say, wow, so you mean this person did this and then that happened? So I'm saying what the other person said, but I'm not saying it verbatim, but I'm paraphrasing, saying it in a more concise way, like you said, in a little wrap up, but to make sure that I also heard right. So it's a way of me checking myself. Oh, did I get that? Did I understand what it is that they were telling me?
And one of the things about this particular piece is if you are actively listening, then you are able to pick on what is being said and what are the key points, versus if you're too busy trying to figure out what suggestions you're going to give, then you're going to miss information. And so this is a way to really build that skill, is listening carefully to what is being said, so that you can then, say, hey, I'm hearing you say, and that must have been so da 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 da. Can you tell me more? Or am I understanding what you're sharing correctly? Like, can you tell me if I'm wrong? Or I don't know, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we had conversations where we're like, okay, so wait, do you mean this? Did I hear that right? And it's not like we're saying, oh, I'm not listening because I didn't hear it right. It's, I really want to make sure I understood. And so that I know what is coming next, or how I can better respond to you. I just want to make sure that actually that I'm hearing the words that you are saying, that you're intending them to be heard, you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's such a beautiful thing when someone's sharing something and then the other person receiving it then says, hey, I think this is what I'm hearing. Because if they're not getting it right, then it offers an opportunity for clarification, or they feel super heard and then they go even deeper and share more and let you into their world.
Yeah, because it's okay if you don't get it right away. I prefer having somebody ask me to clarify, because then I know, okay, this is what they got. And actually here is now where I can go even deeper, like you mentioned, because now I know they're with me and therefore I can keep going. And that is so much more exciting, and it feels more connected than if I might get a little worried if someone's not asking me questions or saying, hold on,
the whole time.
Okay, so we've offered encouragers through our body language, or perhaps we're saying, oh yeah, tell me more. We might be paraphrasing to get clarification. Are we really hearing them out? So after that, we might summarize. And to me, what I think summarize is, if someone were to ask you about this, or if you were to revisit this person and this topic, that you would be able to have a little Cliff Notes version of what that conversation was about. And I have squirrel brain. I have like the shortest memory. So I may not be the best at it, but at least I can get the gist of what the feeling was. If, somebody were to ask me, would I be able to summarize what it was that I heard? Would I be able to myself say, this was what the conversation was?
And some of you might be thinking right now, wait, so what's the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing? And what I would say is, with paraphrasing, we're focusing on making sure that we reflect back to the person what they're saying has happened. And it's more content-based, and you take bits of information. Whereas with summarizing, you're going to look at the overall picture. It's going to be more information. You're allowing more time to pass before you share, okay, this is what I'm hearing. And you're also focusing in on the emotion.
Yes. And I think we're also not saying that at the end of every conversation that you're like, hold on, I need to summarize what I heard. I mean, unless it's really relevant there, but it's not like at the end of every telephone conversation or Zoom call that you're like, okay, here, this is what you said. Okay, ready? But is it something that if you were reflecting on it later, you'd be able to have a little snapshot into the overall conversation and feeling?
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because it's like, we're not saying that this is how every single conversation should go at all. Really kind of just, of course, I'm going to say you feel it out. You sense the energy and how the two of you are vibing. You'll know if it's a good time to summarize what was shared, and it might be something like, I'm imagining us going out to eat, Denisse, and being like, "Oh, it was so nice to see you today. It was great to hear about yada yada yada," and I really feel like I got to hear more about how and then share an emotion word here, and then, say, "I'm looking forward to seeing you again." Something like that.
Yeah.
Whew. So we have given you a lot of information, but really hoping to have shared something that surprised you, or that's been new information on how to improve your active listening skills.
Or maybe you nerded out with us and you're just as excited as we are about listening. We are like buzzing with excitement. It's really funny.
Yeah. And we never stop getting better at it. There's going to be times when we're not doing a great job at it, and it's okay. It's all data that helps us improve and be better and have stronger connections with others. And, I hope that this helps to inspire you to improve a skill that we, that we don't usually work on, or that we are present to pay attention to. I think our society has gotten to a place where, sadly, we have to be taught how to listen better. To be able to really empathize with other people, we have to be taught to do it. And I don't think that's the case for everyone, but it's definitely something that, sadly, I think is leaving us, and we're having to take it back.
Yeah. And if you do want to do more reading, we will have this book in our show notes, so you can follow up in that if that was something that was exciting to you too.
I don't think I mentioned the author, but this is Teri Quatman. And like I said, we'll put it in the show notes.
With all of that said, to summarize that we were actively listening to each other, we talked about what is active listening. What does that look like? So there's what you're saying or not saying, and how do we get into this practicing this skill? And there were 3 steps, starting with quieting down, the second being present. And the difference between the two is in quieting down to set yourself up. So are you really busy in your mind? Is there something that's distracting you? And that can then take you away from actively listening. So once those distractions and those thoughts have been put on pause, then you can be present, which is then that second piece. And then 3, finally, that you're listening to not just what's being said, but how it's being expressed to you in emotion through the words the person is saying or through their body language. And then we also closed with a few tips, give some encouragers, say things like, tell me more, nod your head. And as long as they're sincere, right? You're not just throwing in,
yes.
I
like it.
So yeah, do your ahs and yeah, and paraphrase to clarify. So repeat back some information like, did I get that? Or so that may be clarifiers for yourself. And then summarizing. So not so much that it's a formal summary, like kind of like what I'm doing now. It's not so much that, because that would be weird if you do that at the end of every conversation. But it's more of something you take away with you, that you know the overall feel of the conversation, what was said, kind of something that you can bookmark. Or if you're catching up with someone, like Joe had mentioned, at the end of a conversation, it's, wow, it was so fun to talk to you with you about this and that, and how fun it was to catch up, and hopefully we can do this again, another time. So that's another example of summarizing. And gotta breathe. We did do a lot. We haven't done an episode like this in a while.
I'm so juiced. I keep saying that.
I know. I think that's why we were so excited. We were just like, yeah, we just love this kind of stuff. And then we left you with a book. Thank you, Joe, for bringing that. I think that's it. I think.
Yeah. you covered it all. Amazing summarizing skills right there.
Was I listening?
I feel seen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We did want to say before we close, we do not want to close today, clearly. We want to invite you to support our show. You know, there's monetary ways, of course, and there's also non-monetary ways. And one of these ways is by purchasing books through our bookshop. That is one option. And the other way is to support us through our Love and Evolve podcast PayPal account. And that is at Love and Evolve. And if you're in a place where you're like, I'm not really sure I can spend money right now, that's totally fine. You know that the best way to support us is liking our page, following us on Instagram, sharing our content. If there's a post that you like, bookmarking our quotes, sharing our quotes on your stories. Yeah. There's so many ways of sharing our stuff with other people. They will listen to it too. And I think bottom line, our goal is to share love with people, to share ways to improve and just have more access to wellness tips and things like that. That doesn't necessarily require breaking the bank.
Yes. Love everything you just said. Thank you.
Thank you all of you for your support. We love you. Un beso.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
We thank you for sharing your time with us and for listening to the Love and Evolve podcast, where we share tools, resources, and education on topics that cover holistic wellness, encompassing mind, body, and spirit.
Find details on how to stay connected with us in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. Les damos un fuerte y enorme abrazo. Mwah.
Mwah.